We do have a questionnaire for all of you in the audience. The theme of our panel is money, 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 and we will be talking about the latest trends in payment technology and businesses in this sector. So the questionnaire that we have, you log into the website called pigeonhole.at. Again, that's pigeonhole.at. The passcode is STYT 2018. And when you're ready, we have a poll. Can we get it up on the screen? So, what do you think will be the main way people pay for microtransactions in daily life in 3 years? Number 1, digital wallets such as Alipay, PayPal. Number 2, credit cards. 3, cryptocurrency. 4, something else. And while you're doing that, I will introduce our panelists. So, closest to me, we have Molly Shea. She is the Senior Vice President and General Manager of Global Money Transfer Asia Pacific Western Union. Next, we have Justin Lee. He is the CEO and founder of Cashshield. Cashshield is a cybersecurity firm, and they hold companies like Alibaba and Razor as customers, and they're developing the front-end technology in that field. And next to him, we have David Hardoon, who is the Chief Data Officer for Monetary Authority of Singapore. Okay, so let's look at the results. Okay, still changing a little bit. Predominantly, people are very bullish on digital wallets, not so much on cryptocurrency, and definitely not so much on credit cards anymore. So I guess I'd like to start with Molly. In this space right now, for the foreseeing maybe 1 year to come, what do you see are the greatest trends in this sector? What will be most payment players be preparing for in the sector?
Great. Well, thanks, Lulu, for inviting me here to share. I think right now what we're seeing in the payment space is more innovation in the last 10 and 15 years than the last 100. Western Union's been around for 150, so we've lived through quite a few of those. But to your point of the next year, what are we going to see? It's going to be tremendous. The pace at which we're innovating is tremendous. So right now you've got things like the mobile wallets, you've got contactless payments, and you've got mobile apps for almost every financial service out there being launched regularly. We don't really see these as much as market disruptors as market evolution. And as long as the customer is going to demand fast, convenient, ease, and seamless service, we're going to continue to innovate, and you're going to see new things happen. And it's exciting, all the governments, what they're doing to be out there with fintech and be really innovating and helping private enterprise. And what I would say is you think about the customer, they really want that fast, but yet convenient, connected service. So they want to be able to get a bank service as quickly as they get a cup of coffee. They want to be able to transfer money just as quickly as they send a text. So in order to do that, you've now got the smartphone, and there's over 2 billion out there, many here in Asia, and the expectation of that customer to really get to that seamless service is really going to leapfrog us over a lot of the current hurdles that we've got. And it's really going to be about the customer and that bridging that omni-channel, physical and digital with new innovation, because we still have to deliver what they want and need.
Absolutely. So the key term is leapfrogging. And speaking of that, you are one of the oldest players in the sector, but we do see technology companies, for example, Alibaba, they're getting into the space of cross-border remittance using blockchain-based technology. Recently launched this whole program to help people in Hong Kong to remit money into Philippines using blockchain-based technology. How are you dealing with new trends like this? What are you doing to prepare?
So that's very exciting. And what we do is we do pilot. We pilot with Ripple right now. We look at all kinds of blockchain technologies, distributed ledgers. But we're a global company. What they've launched is one simple use case from Hong Kong to the Philippines. And it's very limited. It's paid out into a mobile wallet. We, as a global company, want to be there for everything, right? So we want to be able there to send cash, to send from an account to an account. We can send digitally, you can send in person. So I think you have to be watching these technologies, and we're very excited about blockchain and the potential for the efficiency that it can drive. But I think we have to wait. It's not regulated yet. And when you've got one use case, that's one thing, but when you're trying to replicate that around the globe, you have to be very careful and make sure that you're really piloting and understanding that technology, and I think that's where we want to play right now.
Absolutely. So opportunities, challenges, and regulations, some things that we are going to talk next on. So Justin, your company, last time we talked, actually we were sharing, Justin was sharing with me some of this front-end technology that they're using right now to do fraud detection for mobile apps. Really, really crazy stuff out there. Can you share with the audience some of the new technologies? For example, the pressure point on the mobile phones, stuff like that. Can you talk about these front-end technology that wasn't available to traditional banks and how you're using that to do data analysis?
Yeah, I mean, if I carry on the discussion, it's going to be a little bit scary, so I try to make it less scary. So hackers today are using machine learning themselves to create tools to disguise themselves. So in 1 minute, they could be using a desktop to launch an attack. In another second, they can change into an Android phone or into an iPhone in a matter of minutes. So this means that in order to keep up with them, we do need more data to see where are they changing their patterns to catch them as well. So some of the things that we could potentially collect in terms of the apps is, let's say, your kind of your device ID, your screen resolutions, even your battery life. It's weird to think why are we collecting information like battery life. But for example, let's say there's a coordinated cluster of attack. So you detect them as a potential fraud, but in order to just confirm that they are the same group, let's say that all of them are having exactly 78% as the battery life, because the hackers are just lazy to tamper with it. So it helps us provide the confidence to block that. So data is a key factor in preventing fraud. Although it sounds scary, but at this stage there's no choice, because hackers themselves are tampering with this data. Yeah.
So when you talk about data collecting, for example, battery life, whether a user swipes left, swipes right, how hard they press on their phones, all of this data, what channels are you using to gather this data? And also, does that mean all the technology companies out there, all the apps that we have on our phone are actually secretly collecting all this data as well?
Yeah, so that is a very good question. I'm going to be a bit more careful handling that. But so whatever data is collected, it requires permission. So for example, let's say that you are requesting permission to access your location. So in order for us to get that data, it has to require the permission from the user. But in regards to the data protection for users as well, we have to be very, very careful to indicate that some of this data is used for certain reasons. For example, in our case, it has to be used for fraud prevention and not other behavioral analytics that we provide. So it's purely for fraud prevention.
Now, David, we were talking earlier about how you held many hats. You're both a regulator, but also you want to see Singapore develop as an ecosystem, as an economy, attracting the latest technology and entrepreneurs here. What is the mindset that you have as a regulator when you're juggling so many different identities, and especially for you, since you're developing the technology for the MAS? So how do you take an approach to all of this?
Sure, and first, thank you for inviting me, and it's good to see that money, the regulator is still relevant. It is actually an interesting and unique situation, because MAS is a consolidated regulator and a financial development hub. And I guess the fundamental approach that we're taking is that differs from the traditional point of view that innovation and regulation is essentially a swing. It's either this way or that way. We're trying to find, and it's a very difficult landing point whereby we're driving innovation, because that's what we want. What does it mean to us? How do we explore all the potentials, but concurrently do not relinquish the stability? We do not relinquish the regulation. We don't relinquish the things that can go wrong. Effectively, if you think about it, is how do we identify the possibilities, explore them through pilot schemes, through sandboxing, as we put in place, but at the same time be cognizant of where things can go wrong, and while no one knows the future, try and prevent them in advance or try to prepare as much as possible.
One of the cases that came up this morning was the SingHealth cyber attack. How concerned are you from a regulatory perspective of scenarios like that happening?
How concerned? I'm a regulator. I'm always concerned. I mean, I think that's the DNA of what we do. Yeah, I mean, jokes aside, absolutely, of course we're concerned. And being more the financial industry, which is the most susceptible if you think about it, everyone wants the money. But again, it's taking deliberately a calmed look at it and understanding how to do better, how to defend when needs to be defended, how to understand these types of behavior. Whether it's a matter from a regulatory perspective, it's a matter from introduction of new technologies, it's a matter from approach, from conduct. That calmness is extremely important. And where things go wrong, identify that and fix them. And concurrently, as I mentioned, having that balance, not just wait for things to go wrong.
Right. The other topic that we already touched upon is cryptocurrency, blockchain.
Yes.
For the Singapore authority, MAS specifically, what is your approach to this space?
Yeah, I was wondering when that question will pop up. So, okay, personally, I always like looking at this as crypto tokens, because my definition of currency kind of has to be issued by us. But semantics aside, we're trying to find a balance. And what do I mean by that is, where possible, to be technology agnostic. Because there's a huge risk, in my point of view, when you come up with regulations or policies that are very technology specific. Because as we see, technology is rapidly evolving. And we all know that it takes quite a significant amount of time to put regulation in place. So by the time it's in place, it may no longer be valid. So to your point about tokens and so forth, fundamentally, if I make it more specific, let's say in ICOs, if it smells, looks, behaves, feels, acts like a security, based on our approach, based on our policies, it is a security. If it operates within an exchange that, let's say, currently is a token exchange, but it's an underlying security, it's a security exchange. So again, it's taking an agnostic view towards the technology and looking with respect to the content and the objective of what we're trying to achieve from a policy point of view.
So the point is not to be too technology specific, yes, because the technology is always changing so fast. From the company perspective, both of you, what would you like to see from regulators, and what is the dynamic that you often encounter when you're interacting with some of the key regulators in financial hubs, for example, in Hong Kong or in Singapore?
Well, I think it's definitely collaboration with the regulators and continuing to work, especially as we've got all this innovation, and ensuring that things are uniform and that we're all abiding by the same regulatory guidelines. I think that's very important. So collaboration with private enterprises is very important. Sometimes that knowledge sharing really helps make a better product at the end. And then, we're strategic alliances and partnerships. I think are very important.
Yeah, for me, I think that the best thing that we hope is to be able to look at the newer breed of technologies, because nowadays technology advances very, very quickly. And companies like ours or other kind of startups could potentially have newer tech to detect faster and rapidly this kind of coordinated attacks as well. So, because traditionally, let's say 5 years ago, usually the kind of approach is to work with like bigger companies, let's say the likes of IBM or HP. But looking at the landscape today, it's way faster to look at local region companies that are able to move faster and use and promote their technology in order to go global as well. So that's something that we hope to partner with startups to do that as well.
If I may add to that, because I think the point about regulation, about partnership is exceptionally important, and that's actually part of the attitude that we take in terms of how do we partner, how do we identify it in terms of a one-to-one relationship as an entire ecosystem. And then also, I guess it's a realm which perhaps less known of it, but it's actually partnership amongst regulators. Mm-hmm. It's that equal degree of mutualization of use case sharers, challenges, issues, and that's extremely important because fundamentally we're all regulating pretty much the same entities. We're all looking at the same time of activities. And it's about, while each regulator will have its own jurisdiction, its own culture, its own approach, the fundamental challenges or thought processes that we're all going is rudimentally the same.
Yeah, That's a very interesting point that you bring up, that the regulators are actually in competition as well. They're all competing for the best talent and the money and the entrepreneurs. So for example, Justin, when you decide where you wanted to set up your startup, what were some of the factors that came into place? Was it the Temasek money, for example, that made you decide to set up shop here in Singapore?
Yeah, our case is pretty unique. We're actually 10 years old. And at that moment in Singapore, there's no market. So in order for us to survive, we need to really go where we are not comfortable of. So we always believe in the DNA of trying to survive out there in the sea. And if you can make it, then you can scale. Otherwise, if you grow in a pond, there's no way that you can grow as well. So our first step 10 years ago is to go where our customers is. So we go a lot in Europe to US, and I could imagine today that if we have not done so, we pretty much won't be here today as well. So it's a more of a matter of being able to survive out there, think global at the first day, and come back here and try to promote the rest of the ecosystem and build up a stronger base here as well.
Molly, do you want to add to how you select your key regions for development, your core markets?
You know, it's so different when you operate across the globe. I'm fortunate because I'm in the most innovative region of all. So it's really a market by market, and it goes back to that strategic partnership and collaboration as well, really understanding what the customer need is. Some markets are much more advanced with bringing the digital and the physical together. A lot of markets, we still have to maintain a big cash network because that's still very, very important to customers. So that's probably the most critical thing.
So since our audience chose digital wallets as the key payment method for the next few years, I wanted to ask all three of you, what do you see as the key opportunities going forward? Many people think that the space has already been dominated by giants like Ant Financial in China and Tencent as well, and the opportunities are already dying out there. What do you say to that?
I would just say it's the infrastructure that's going to be really important. If you can pay in funds one way and pay out one way, that's great. But if a customer wants it in a different format, it's important to be playing to all of that.
And Justin, maybe you can talk about the cybersecurity aspect of all of this.
Yeah, I mean, looking at the landscape today, I feel that technological advancement might not be the key of these players dominating the whole region, but it's all about users, right? If you look at what's happening in China, WeChat and Alipay, they started off with the kind of sticky users that use them every day, and they can use that to leverage on expanding into the Southeast Asia today. If you look at in Southeast Asia, like Gojek and Grab as well, it's exactly the same play. With users, you can start to expand and start to create an ecosystem within that as well. But the kind of key risk today we face is that when you are expanding too heavily, which means that companies are always in a battlefield every single day. And which means that they need to grow so fast, they need to create so much artificial value, like promotions to get users on hook, that security becomes a major concern. So although promotions, if is getting abused by fake accounts, millions of fake accounts getting created just to abuse those promo codes, it might sound not like real money, but actually these are real money that adds into the ecosystem as well. So I think this really creates a whole ecosystem for cyber criminals to leverage on that, and companies, because they are fighting so heavily every single day, usually they get neglected as well.
When a scenario where a fraud actually happens, who actually takes all of the burden? Who carries the burden and the cost when for example, a fraudulent transaction happens?
Yeah, so it's divided into two parts. One is, let's say, accounts. Accounts can be taken over today, or they can be created for fake reasons. So let's say regarding trying to spread fake news today is a problem. So one of the media is to create a lot of fake accounts to use them as real accounts and spread news. And you could also use fake accounts for promotions. So for this aspect, the real users are always as a victim, because they are the victims that getting their accounts being taken over for these purposes. For transactions-wise, you are looking at stolen credit cards being used online. And usually for this, the consumers are the ones that suffers the most. Why? Not really on monetary reason, because usually the banks will come in to say, okay, I will take over this loss for you. But it's more on their information, their identity, their email accounts, their IC, their CPF accounts, their tax accounts. Everything is leaked online today. And let's say if we talk about Uber, there's a certain, there's a major hack just, let's say, a few months ago. Even Singapore is affected. Our accounts for our information is getting leaked out there. But just over 1 or 2 months, people forget. They start to go back using Uber again. So this is kind of a situation that they created to get users so sticky and rely on them today.
Right. And how do you identify that, you know, you say that you use data analysis to detect all these cyber criminals. What are the key patterns that you look for when you're detecting credit card fraud, for example?
Yeah, so we look at almost everything we can do within 0.1 second. So once they log into the web page, we collect, for example, their screen resolution, their swiping patterns, their pressure points, like you mentioned. But most important is we rely on pattern recognition machine learning technique to see whether they are tampering with any of the data point. Like I mentioned, potentially they are lazy to tamper their battery or lazy to tamper with their device ID. So these are the things we look out for. But you can imagine those millions of points that we try to trace, whether or not they are just tampering 1 or 2 of them.
I see. So identifying the patterns, similar patterns that you see across board, and then saying that maybe this belongs to the same hacker group that are using people's credit cards.
Yes, spot on.
I see. Can you talk about, David, can you talk a little bit about the technology that you're developing right now as a regulator to prevent these cyber attacks?
No, actually, I'll be very happy to. We've taken a very deliberate stance that we're actually quite open in what we'll be doing in-house. For the very simple reason we want it to be echoed in the industry. So we are extensively looking at machine learning algorithms, artificial intelligence approaches, network optimizations for things like fraud, anti-money laundering, risk mitigations, compliance, and of course the less exciting elements of just robotic process automation when you're able to get consistency in process. And in fact, we've made it very known to the industry that we're taking down a tranche of what we call machine readability and data reusability. Because, quite frankly, we want to make sure that we have an understanding of our data, which in turn means we will not ask for data more than once. And this was actually announced by my MD last year when he said that financial institutions can politely, because we're still regulators, decline if we ask for the same thing. So we're actually quite extensively looking at various approaches to advance us through the whole realm of what we call supervisory technology. But this can only be and should be mimicked by the regulatory technology, the RegTech, by the financial institutions. And this is where we encourage them to pilot, to explore, to trial. And effectively, if I may say, to stop using the regulator as an excuse for not doing things.
How do you identify those key areas of demand, though? Is it by talking to the industry players?
Absolutely. Absolutely. So it's continuous discussion, continuous exploration. I would even say almost an open heart-to-heart conversations when a regulator says, tell me your problems. It's like, I don't want to do that. But it's really important because fundamentally we don't want to get into a culture where compliance is we tick the box. We genuinely want to address issues and identify risk from a systemic point of view, from a technological perspective, even down to the areas which are a bit more societal, like, for example, in data. Just having an appreciation, understanding of potential challenges may, in how we go about building applications, should we collect all the data? We want to because there's the whole data economy now, but should we? Or if we do it, how should we do it if suddenly something happens?
Are you able to disclose your stance on that issue now?
With respect to the approach of using data?
Yes, and how you collect it.
No, so again, it goes by making sure that there's as much governance as possible. However, that there is, well, internally shareability, there's usability, and there's a need to use it. So fundamentally, I believe that we should not collect data we don't need. That there's permission-based. I need to ask for a permission in terms of usability. But of course, as a regulator, I have a slightly advantage in terms of what I need to across the entire industry to making sure there's a stability aspect. But this is something which is extremely important, and you'll find from PDPC in Europe, everyone is looking at, because fundamentally the industry as a whole and the consumers are all becoming a lot more educated, understand what it means to depart from their data, and it means what it means in terms of using that data.
Absolutely. We still have a little bit of time left, so I was wondering if each of you can actually give your prediction for the next year. What do you see as the key trends in this sector for payments in the next year?
I'm going to say cybersecurity.
Do you want to elaborate a little bit?
I think it's just so important and critical in order to enable all these technologies to grow. We have to really lock down and make sure that everything is secure, or we're really going to be limited in what we're able to do. So I think we've got to break through that, and that's going to...
I see. So innovate, but also make sure that your risks are controlled.
Absolutely.
Justin?
We view that the super apps that builds large ecosystems that can sustain themselves are coming up within the next year.
Blockchain for cross-border settlement.
I see. That's the most interesting and most exciting area. Lots of startups in that space as well.